want to talk today about base building. There's a big movement lately. You see it a lot, anti 3-star. The purpose of an anti 3-star base is the main goal is to not get 100% against you on the very first attack in a war. If you are halfway down the roster, like out of a 10-man war, if you're number 5 or below, you should get 3-starred every single war unless the other team makes mistakes. It's impossible to protect against, for instance, a Town Hall 8. There's no layout you can make that a good Town Hall 9 attack can't 3-star you. Town Hall 9, there's no build that in the world that is impossible to be 3-starred by a Town Hall 10. So the goal is to make it so that whoever attacks you first, unless they go like 6 down and are taking advantage, some guy's not very good, so they tell him to attack really low, whatever. If you're attacked by a comparable base progression, you should not get 3-starred on your first attack. That is the end purpose of an anti 3-star base. It doesn't mean that you can't be 3-starred. Obviously, you want to make it more difficult to get 3-starred even on successful second, third attacks. But the secondary goal is to force the other team to use more than one attack. If they have to use 5 attacks to 3-star your base, then that means that, you know, if you're 3-starred on the first attack, they have 1 attack, 3 stars. If it took them 5 attacks, especially if it's a 10 versus 10, that's 25% of their entire war was spent trying to 3-star you. So anyway, one tip that I like for Town Hall 9 is called a Tesla farm. It's putting all 4 of your Teslas in very close range. It helps tremendously against attacks such as Go Wipe, which is very common. A lot of clans aren't very up to date, and they don't know about Goho and Go Laloon or whatever. So they just try to straight up Go Wipe or even Go Wee Wee with the witches and just muscle their way through the base, and it's very difficult. And having all 4 of your level 7 Teslas, that's like close to 400 damage per second if they're hitting the same target, which that's going to be higher damage than a max queen or different things like that for Town Hall 9. That would be more than both level 3 expos. So having them close together, it just creates this kind of zone. The range of all 4 is somewhere in this. If anything crosses into this area, they're going to be getting hit from all 4 Teslas. So if P.E.K.K.A.s come in here, they're going to melt in seconds. Even max level P.E.K.K.A, it just can't take 4 Teslas at once. Another thing that I recommend is your Archer Queen. There's 2 things you can do with an Archer Queen. You can put her fairly deep into the base. In this case, you can see that her range of aggro is like this. So as soon as units break through, you know, if they came from this side, they use wall breakers or jump spell, whatever, to get through this wall. She's going to start shooting stuff as soon as they cross this cannon. But with this compartment here in the way, it means that she may jump over this wall to here, but she can be shooting and she still has another wall between her and the units coming from that side. So having her deep in there, it might force them to try 2 golems to get to the queen instead of just 1. If they came from an opposite side, it makes it extremely difficult for her to get to. So having her deep in the middle forces them to use more effort to take her out if they're going to try to use hogs or, I mean, really anything. The queen is probably the best single defensive unit as far as damage output and versatility. She can hit air, attacks fairly quickly if she needs to change targets, you know, picking off single targets. But the other strategy is, for instance, putting her here. She's way on the outside. But for certain layouts, it's you're basically sacrificing your queen making the enemy say, ooh, the queen's way out here, I'm going to come from this right side, but then leaving the majority of your high-powered defenses on the opposite side. So for instance, if you cut this base into quarters, if you want to lure the enemy to come at this queen, you might want to have 65 to 70% of your high-powered defense, such as Teslas and air defense and expos, you might want to have it somewhere on this half over here, so that if they do come at the queen, they don't get much else out of a kill squad, and they still have the majority of the defense that they have to tear through. The other thing I highly recommend for Town Hall 9 specifically, it kind of gets away from this at Town Hall 10, is double bomb. There's another video I have about double bomb placement specifically. The main thing that you want to avoid is you don't want another defensive structure to be diagonal from your entry and exit structures that are going to guide the hogs over the double bomb. If you put your double bomb here, if hogs are coming in from this way, they hit the air defense, and instead of pathing over both bombs and killing the entire group of hogs, this cannon is going to be closer, so they're going to come at an angle. They're going to trigger this one, and if the attacker sees the first bomb trigger, drops a heal spell in here, by the time they come back over here, they may not trigger this at all, or if they do, the heal spell has healed the hogs enough that a second bomb staggered is not going to take out any of them, or maybe just a few, depending on when that heal spell was dropped. So in this setup, you have the gold storage here to create a barrier of distance, so that way if the hogs are coming from this side, once they get to the air defense, the next closest place that they're going to target, the only one left, is going to be this expo to lead them straight across. And a good double bomb placement is going to be bi-directional, meaning they can come from enter at the air defense or enter from the expo. And say if they came from this way, this cannon is closer, but once all of this is gone, the only thing left is the air defense. So even if they kind of sidestep a little bit for a second, they're still going to make them cross that double giant bomb. And the double giant bomb is your main hog defense. There's other things. Wizard towers can chip away at them and things. And I have a single giant bomb over here with a couple little ones. And it's placed here away from wizard towers because wizard towers are not good for hogs. So if I were to be attacking this base with hogs, I'm going to save some heals and make sure I drop them when they're near the wizard towers, possibly where I think bombs might be. But if you separate your other two giant bombs, you can force them to drop heals where they might not want to otherwise. And I have the other one here, so if you spread them out a little bit, you can have one giant bomb and separate your other two, or sometimes you might want to move this giant bomb here and have two giant bomb locations. It's also a good idea to put your giant bombs on the opposite side of the archer queen, because if the enemy is using a hog attack, their main two things that they're worried about, well, three things: the archer queen, the clan castle defense, and double bombs. So if you put your queen on one side, they kill squad in to kill the queen. The giant bombs should be on the opposite side, because either one, they're going to drop hogs from the opposite side to try to get to them, or two, the kill squad is not going to be able to penetrate all the way to here if they came in for the archer queen. So having your double bombs in between two defenses, opposite side that you think they'll want to attack from, but mostly opposite side of the archer queen, that definitely helps with defense against hogs. Now, that covers most of the ground attacks. Valkyries Honestly, I'm still trying to figure out what works best against Valkyries. It's a fairly new thing that's happening with the new Valkyries. I know that having a lot of compartments helps a lot. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 compartments. That just means that, for instance, if they bring a jump spell, even if it's placed here and allows them into about 4 or 5 compartments, they still have 7 they have to get to. Or, for instance, if they earthquake a section and open up 4 or 5 compartments, you still want a lot of walls between the Valkyries and everything else. So smaller compartments and more number of compartments seems to be one of the best ways to deal with Valkyries. They move so fast and their damage is so high that walls are one of the only things that's going to really slow them down. Expos, they can go down very quickly. They're single target defense. So a group of Valkyries. The bombs also help against Valkyries if they are spread out to force some heals if they have them, or wear them down quite a bit if they didn't bring heals. But compartments and walls is basically the best bet you have, because spring traps, they're only going to target one Valkyrie at a time. So even if all the Valkyries came in from this top side against this base, maximum, if they happen to hit every single spring trap, you're going to take out 6 Valkyries, which, I mean, that's substantial, but that's if they hit every single one. So on to air. One thing that I recommend in general for any Town Hall 9 is to have expos on air and ground. That helps, obviously, with air. It will target the air units, but also the range on ground is so large that it can actually be a hindrance a lot of times, because if the enemy, if they are coming in from this side and they drop a golem right there, this expo is immediately going to start hitting them, which you'd think that's good because it means it's going to be hitting them for a longer period of time. But a lot of times you want it to have a shorter range, because you need as many things targeting it at the same time. So if you have it on air and ground, it helps kind of focus the damage on certain things. Golems have a lot of health. They're going to take a little while to chip down no matter what. And if you have a shorter range, it just means that by the time it starts hitting the golem, when it actually gets to the mortar, there's going to be this cannon, this archer tower, maybe a Tesla. There's going to be a lot more hitting it all at once, and you'll be able to burn stuff down a little bit quicker. And it helps to ensure that it focuses fire where it needs to focus. And having it, some people like it on ground because you can't have, if the expo were here, you can't have these gold mines picked off by single archers or whatever. But really, it's overall best to have it on air and ground, even if it just scares the enemy out of not attacking from air, because honestly, air attacks are a little bit stronger on paper. With the new Valkyries, they kind of caught up to air attacks as far as pure numbers, but any base that has expos set on ground, you're basically asking to get attacked from the air, because level 3 expos, if you have 2 of them, that's 180 damage every second that you're letting the enemy choose if they want to take that damage or not. So having them on air and ground, they're still going to hit ground targets on air and ground. So you're not really missing out on anything. You're missing out on about 4.5, 5 tiles of range that's really not needed. So for air defense, you definitely want your 4 air defense for Town Hall 9 to be spread out a little bit. And the biggest thing is you want them in separate compartments, because the easiest way to take out air defense is with ground units, because the air defense will not target them. You basically get to run up to them and tag them for free. And the Archer Queen is technically your 5th air defense. It's the only structure that does comparable damage to a high-level air defense. So in this case, for instance, if the enemy were to attack from this side, they would get the Archer Queen and this 1 air defense, but even a 2 golem kill squad coming in from this way, that leaves 3 air defense unchecked. You know, you could zap 1 with lightning, but then that still leaves 2. With the air defense being in the core and the queen being kind of on the opposite side, it does force the enemy to make that decision. Do they want to you know, suicide the Barbarian King and hope that he can kill the Archer Queen by himself, and then send the Archer Queen and some golems in here to take out 2 air defense, but then that still leaves 2 on the opposite side? Spreading them out really limits the options that the enemy has to try to take out all of the air defenses. The big thing that you want to worry about with the black balloons is they're the single target air traps. They're going to go after the lava hounds. So, for instance, if they did come in here with a full squad and get the Archer Queen and this air defense, let's say they brought double Zapquake and they were going to get rid of this one and this one with spells, since this one's kind of far out this way to the edge. That would mean that this would be the only one left. So the theory behind the black balloons is you want to either place them near the air defense that you think is going to be left alive, that hounds will get sent to, or in this case, I have them near these 2 air defense. So it kind of covers with the air sweepers are going to cover pretty much this whole half. Anything from this direction, they're going to have to deal with the air sweepers first. So coming into this air defense or this air defense from any angle is going to trigger both of the air traps. And I recommend doubling up on black and red balloons. Red balloons should probably be near a wizard tower, and that's because you help strengthen the already strong wizard tower against balloons. If a group of balloons comes in here, they have to get through here first before they can get to the air defense. So having 2 of these pop on a group of balloons at once, it might only take 1 shot from the wizard tower to knock out however many balloons are in that area. So I recommend the red balloons. You don't have to double them up. I like it. But the main thing you do want is for them to be near the wizard tower. And if it's possible, you also want them out of the range of the air defense. So if a lava hound came in this way to this air defense, then yeah, he's going to gather up both of these red balloons. But the balloons being just out of the range of the air defense, it means that if the lava hound comes at these air defense from anywhere outside that little box that I drew, those 2 red balloons are still going to be up for the enemy balloons that come in. And another thing that helps defend against a Golaloon is you want your wizard towers as much as possible to also be outside the range of the air defense. So here you can see the range comes just shy of the air defense from this wizard tower. So when the hound comes in and sits right on top of the air defense, it's going to be shooting the lava hound, but you don't want the wizard tower to be distracted by the lava hound. You want the wizard tower free to shoot balloons that are trying to come in to get to the air defense. So this one, it's a little bit on the edge. There wasn't a whole lot of room to make for this one, for this air defense, but it is clear of this bottom one. And Expos are something that I do recommend putting near the center of the base as best you can. But not in the very core, but you definitely would not want them. For instance, you wouldn't want an Expo way out here. They're very powerful, they're very high health units, so you want to try to protect them as best you can. The next thing that it was very common knowledge back in Town Hall 7 and 8 when your main attack you're defending against is mass dragons. But one thing that is common with anti-3-star base is you'll have the Town Hall, you'll see it way off on the edge, way out over here. A lot of people say, oh man, your Town Hall's way too easy to get to. And if you're trying to protect against 2 stars, there is a anti-2-star base. I don't really agree with the mentality of it. But essentially, you're trying to prevent someone from 100%ing your base. You're not necessarily trying to prevent them from 1-starring you. So in that sense, you want to try to think of your Town Hall as just another high HP building. Your Town Hall is going to have something like 6,000 health, storage is somewhere 2,500 to 3,000. But the goal of all of these high health buildings is to slow down the enemy attack. So sometimes you might see where these camps are, you might see a line of all the gold and all the elixir storages in that line. And I've tried it before. It worked a few times. It didn't work other times. But the purpose of that is if you build a base that has a very obvious weakness as far as which side it can be attacked from, and you want to help try to prevent that or deter an enemy from hitting you from that spot, you line up all your storages there, and it makes it extremely difficult to funnel. Wizards take a while to chip down the storages while the golems are just taking damage and stuff. So there's different uses for the storages in the Town Hall, but you want to remember to use them as kind of like a shield. Pretend like they're guarding your actual defensive structures, kind of like a wall. So for instance, you have 2 gold storages here. They're probably going to get targeted before this archer tower by units that don't target defense. So it's going to be hitting them, especially this air defense, for instance, against dragons. So using these storages, as you can see, I've put several storages along this side because that's the side that I'm expecting an enemy to come in to attack me from. But I didn't put all my chips in one basket in this corner. Another building that a lot of people don't realize is pretty high health is the Dark Elixir Drill. I believe it's the highest HP that's not a storage. So another thing to remember is that no matter what you do, you're going to have weaknesses. The goal of the base is to hide the weaknesses as best you can and disguise them in different ways. Like I said, to lure somebody to attack from this way because this top half of the base is stronger than the bottom half. And another thing that a lot of people start to realize as they mess around and experiment is I like to think about the base in quarters very often. And you want to try to spread out your weaknesses as well as your strengths. So for instance, there's a wizard tower in each quadrant if you split this base into 4. I have the Tesla farm here, but the Archer Queen is off from the Tesla farm, and the Barbarian King is off from the Archer Queen. So each time you move something, for instance, if I were to switch this wizard tower with this cannon, so I just moved something. Well, now I've heavy loaded this. There's 3 wizard towers all in this quadrant, and there's only 1 over here, and it's almost in the middle. So just remember that every time you move something, if you're trying to make one area stronger, you're making another area weaker. Look at it. I put 4 cannons in a row by doing that. So just remember that everything you move if you're making one spot stronger, you've made somewhere else weaker. So the goal is to disguise where your traps are, disguise where your weaknesses are, and try to keep your clan castle towards the center, because if they can just drop a single barbarian out to the side and lure your clan castle out, see what's in it, and probably lure it out to kill it, you really want to protect it as best you can. You shouldn't make your base really weak just so that it can't be lured very easily. But it's much harder to deal with whatever's inside there while the enemy is in the core of your base than it is for them to just lure it out, drop a poison and a queen or whatever. So putting the clan castle in the center is always a good idea. And just going from there, the biggest thing is remember to make it asymmetrical. You don't want a box that's the same from every angle, because what people think they're doing is making it strong from all angles and all sides, but really you're making it weak from any point. Like, you can just choose anywhere and attack from it and you'll get the same result. So I highly recommend not having just some square base that's just a box that's the same from every angle, every side. Try to be aware of the range of the defenses that you're putting down to help try to not overlap, for instance, all 4 cannons in one spot. If you have all cannons in one area, somebody can bring balloons in that aren't even going to get shot at, take out all the mortars, all the cannons, etc. So I know it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to remember. Base building is probably the most complicated part of this game, because if you learn an attack style, for instance, Goho, you're starting to get good with hogs, that's one attack style. That might take you a month to learn how to do really well and really understand it. And then another month you learn Golaloon. Well, when it comes to base building, you have to be able to protect yourself against every single strategy out there. So my bases used to be really strong against hogs and against lava hounds and balloons. Now there's Valkyries that have been tearing me up. So the game's going to keep changing. You got to keep trying to adapt, trying to get better, and understand why your base is good against certain things and weak against other things. So I highly recommend every time you get 3-starred, go back and watch it and try to understand, how did they exploit where the weaknesses are in my base? How did they get in so fast and just demolish everything? And then you might realize, oh, my archer queen's too far into the core and she's still easy to get to, or too far outside. You might want to protect her a little more. Anytime you get 3-starred, I recommend it moving at least a little bit around. And even if you don't, if your base is doing well, moving a few traps around is not going to really change the strength or weakness of the base. So, move balloons over here, even if it's doing well, just to see if that helps or hurts. And it might help you better understand why traps need to be in certain places and how effective they are in different places. So just keep experimenting. Unique bases are the hardest because you're forcing the enemy to have to rethink how to attack. If it's a base he's never seen before, he's not going to automatically know where the traps are, where the weaknesses are. He's going to have to sit there and figure it out. So I don't recommend copying a base off the internet. You can copy the wall structure and move the buildings inside around. That's fine. But just be creative and try things out. Trial and error is probably the best way to get around it. So I think I've talked long enough. Take those tips, make some good bases, and good luck, guys. See you later.